ओके सो हेलो एंड सबसे पहले तो वेलकम मुकुल। जानना चाहेंगे माया 3
जी।
वेब सीरीज़ है एंड इससे पहले टेलीविज़न किया, अब वेब सीरीज़। तो सबसे पहले तो जानना चाहेंगे, पिछले दो पार्ट है उसको तो लोगों ने बहुत ज़्यादा पसंद किया।
जी।
अब ये जो थर्ड पार्ट है क्या कुछ नया लेके आने वाला है? सबसे पहले तो आप नए होंगे ये तो हमें पता है, लेकिन आपके साइड से क्या कुछ नया रहेगा?
देखिए, इसका जो थीम है जो कि फ्रेंचाइज में रहता ही है,
हम्म।
इस पूरे फ्रेंचाइज में द थीम इज़ ऑफ कोर्स टैबू।
हम्म।
और इसमें ऐसी कहानियाँ देखने को मिलती हैं जो सोशली, जो चीज़ें, जो भावनाएं सोशली शायद नहीं उतनी एक्सेप्टेड हैं।
हम्म।
तो कहीं ना कहीं इसमें भी वो एक थोड़ा सा एंगल है।
हम्म।
लेकिन इसमें जो कहानी है, इट्स ट्रूली, यू कुड से, despite or in spite of the fact Maya 3 being a sort of a erotic thriller, the story is truly like a love story. I'd say it's a beautiful love story, which is handled so sensitively, especially by the writer Vikram Bhatt, and the lines that have been written are so nice. So I would say that it's beyond its own thing that it created in the first two. Maya created a certain parameter of its own. This one has gone beyond that.
Okay.
I feel, yeah.
And about your character, if you can tell
My
us.
character is a very interesting one. He's a married man who's sort of in his 40s somewhere, and how love strikes him, and then later on, the plot thickened towards certain complications in his family and this and that, and how it goes on towards the end. And it's a beautiful culmination, something that people have not expected or have not seen so far, and it totally justifies the love quotient, so to say, in this particular series.
एंड द स्पेशल थिंग अबाउट माया इज वो हर एपिसोड में ऑडियंसेस को ये सोचने पर मजबूर कर देता है कि नेक्स्ट एपिसोड में क्या होने वाला है। देयर इज वन क्वेश्चन मार्क इन ऑडियंस की, मतलब अब अगले एपिसोड में क्या होगा। तो इस बार भी वो क्वेश्चन मार्क बरकरार रहने वाला है।
Absolutely, absolutely. That I'd say is part of the genius of the writer and the director Krishna Bhatt. That's Vikram's daughter, and this show is full of that. And not just every episode. Within an episode, you won't be able to know what's going to happen next. Yeah.
ओके, टॉकिंग अबाउट विक्रम भट्ट, महेश भट्ट की बात करें या विक्रम भट्ट की बात करें, दे आर उनकी फिल्में अगर हम बात करें या सीरीज बात करें, दे आर आउटस्टैंडिंग, नो डाउट। सो हाउ इज योर वर्किंग एक्सपीरियंस विद देम, इफ वी टॉक, या फिर किस तरीके से उनका काम होता है, इसके बारे में थोड़ा सा बताइए।
I started my career with the Bhatt camp. I started my career with the Bachchans and the Bhatt camp together. So before working with Mr. Mahesh Bhatt, I worked with Tanuja Chandra, who was again, Mr. Bhatt was more or less her mentor. Then I ended up working with Bhatt Saab himself. And while I was working with Mr. Mahesh Bhatt in Dastak, Vikram at that time, Vikram had written that film, and he was one of the creative pillars of that film. So that's where I met Vikram. Not only was he handling the camera, but also he was very much part of the screenplay. He's the one who had, carved the whole thing out. So from there onwards, my association with them began. You can pretty much say, like filmi bhasha mein कहते हैं कि मैं उन्हीं की देन हूँ in this film line, and they're lovely people, very gracious people. They've blessed me. Bhatt Saab blessed me with a fantastic red carpet welcome into the film industry, which very few people get. And then whenever Vikram Bhatt has worked with me, casted me or my brother, I'd say, in any film or series, it always has been a fantastic role. Whether it's Creature 3D, or whether it's Bhag Johnny, or whether it's now Maya 3. So, of course, there's a certain mutual affection that we have for each other because we're old friends. And the best part is now, I was just telling Krishna the other day that I've ended up working with all three generations in a family, which is her father, and her grandfather. So now, when Krishna was making her show, then I guess Vikram thought of me, which again I'd consider as quite a feather in my cap, because there's one set of people who's constantly repeating you, and it's something really fantastic and says a lot about them.
So obviously it's too late to ask you, but we would like to know, how did your association with Bharat started, and how this relationship relationship till now continued and all?
My association with Bhatt Saab, you talk about Mahesh Bhatt or Vikram?
Yes,
With,
both
with
of
both
them.
actually.
Yeah,
I was I was doing a show called Mumkin for Tanuja Chandra, and then I was simultaneously shooting for another show called Mouthful of Sky, and that's when Bhatt Saab spotted me, and he says, "तुम बड़े सुंदर लगते हो, you're a handsome boy and all of that," and then he offered me Dastak, and he says, "You're doing this role." And when we started shooting for it, I spent a lot of time with Vikram, who used to be there, trying to get my character right in that film. And that's where this whole association started, and it went on and on. And every time I used to meet them anywhere, even if I was not working with them, one thing they all believed and they all stuck to was that I still remember Bhatt Saab's voice like that. Ki, you're a very good actor. Arey bhai, tum achhe actor ho, you know, this and that. And so in the middle, I had started doing a lot of regional films. And the thing about them is that whenever there's a good role, and because they know me so well, so every time they think that, yeah, this particular role would befit Mukul, they always call me. And nothing is never an issue with them. It's almost like family. With Bhatt Saab, I feel like more like he's more like a teacher to me. He's somebody who I look up to as how I would back in school to my headmaster, to my principal. And then there's Pooja Bhatt, who's a very good friend of mine. And again with Vikram and me almost, you could say, began our careers together. So yeah, we're old friends.
and that too coming up from Bhatt Saab ki you're a good actor is something like which is biggest thing, you know. जल्दी उनके उनसे आता
नहीं
नहीं
आता
है ये
नहीं, मैंने डांट भी बहुत खाई है, ऐसा नहीं है कि मुझे सिर्फ अच्छी बातें बोली हैं. You know how Bhatt Saab is, and it's उनकी डांट भी, so there's always a lesson behind it, which makes सीख होती है. So yeah, I could any time say that these are my favorite people that I'd love to work with again and again.
Any one lesson you would like to tell us कि जो आपने सीखा है उनसे और आप अपने साथ जिंदगी भर लेकर चलेंगे उस चीज़ को?
One thing that has really helped me working initially, again with Mr. Mahesh Bhatt and with Vikram during Dastak was, see, I was an absolute raw newcomer, and I could have gone in either direction. You know, I could have gone towards, okay, I've been launched in such a big way and I'm on the threshold of stardom and all of that. But they drilled one thing, and including Tanuja, they drilled one thing into me, that acting is extremely important, to know your craft, to be able to express all the emotions plausibly and believably in front of the camera, and as really as possible. So they used to stress a lot on that. And every time I did try to cheat a little bit in front of the camera, you know, kai baar karta hai actor thodi si cheating, but they would catch it like instantly and sort of just, you know, cut short the whole thing over there and say, no, you have to do it again. So that drilling in of always committing to the moment and doing it as honestly as possible, that's sort of taken me a long way, because a lot of my films didn't really work at the box office, so the stardom part of it just kind of, you know, went. But then what made me survive over these years was just the craft that I learned. And I never really went to any acting school or theatre, so that was my school. Mr. Mahesh Bhatt and Vikram Bhatt and the entire zone over there. And that's what I guess has made me survive for so long.
As you said, you know, you started working for regional cinemas.
Yeah.
So, do you think that somewhere or the other it affected your Bollywood career, or it affected your work in Bollywood?
Not really. It didn't really affect. Like now, when I look back at it, in the long run, it never really did. But then, उस समय होता है, हमेशा सब बोलते ही हैं that you know, he's doing films down south, or he's doing films here, and he's not seen. And but ऐसा कभी हुआ नहीं. कोई ना कोई director कहीं ना कहीं मिल ही जाता था, you know, and there would always be a role for me somewhere. God bless those people. I'm ever so grateful to them. Whoever thinks of me in a role. And somehow or the other, I guess I just crawled my way back into it.
Okay, besides Mayati, there is one more series coming up from your side, if I'm not wrong, right? So if you can tell us something about that too.
Yeah, that is a series that's being produced by Zenofa Fatima in Dubai, under the banner of Zen Productions. And it's to do with the paranormal. And it's mostly an after-hour kind of a series, which normally people watch after dinner. And it's not really horror, it's paranormal. It deals with things that prevail in the other sphere of life, you could say, the other dimension of life, and things like that, which are dealt in a very realistic manner, and which can happen to, you know, your everyday, regular, common people who live in the city. So that makes it even more interesting that, you know, when these kind of things start happening in crowded areas, so it adds a sort of a nice mystery to it. So that series deals with that. And it's going to be a short series. This is the second season. It's called Inertia. And yeah, I'm looking forward to working it.
Okay, so you know you worked in a television as well.
Yeah.
So why didn't you continue working in a television? What was the reason behind it?
Honestly speaking, I shouldn't be saying this. I might sound a little ungrateful, which I really don't want to. I always loved television, and it made me survive for a very, very long time. I began my career with it also, but somewhere down the line, I began to get stifled within a certain typecast in television. Most directors and producers in television and channels, they saw me as that sweet boy next door, you know, the husband returning home with a bag in his hand. So, apart from a few shows which really stood out, like Gharwali Uparwali and all that, most of them that I did were, you know, somewhere I was, not only was my acting, but even my image was, I was kind of done and over with, pretty ripe, you know, playing that clean shaven man and the man of the family kind of thing. So there was one time when I voluntarily did make a decision that, okay, I'm going to kind of refrain a little bit from at least doing these category of shows, you know, which are really popular in India, and they're doing so well, the daily soap category. So maybe for that reason, I chose to do something more interesting and more challenging, like doing a film in a different language, where the language is really not mine. So it becomes more challenging to tackle a role, and that too roles that were not really the sweet boy kinds. So yeah.
Okay, so you work with you know digital platform. You work with Bollywood. You work with TV. Now you work with regional cinema as well. So which platform like which platform gives a chance to experiment into character? Do you think, like, according to you, which is that platform? Like, is it regional cinema? Is it Bollywood, or is it an web platform?
But I'll tell you something, it all depends on the director.
Okay.
It all depends on the director, and it all depends on in what creative spirit that particular film is being made. Some films are made to sort of just about make it to the shelf, and you know, whoever has to make money, or if it makes money, or if it's promoted well, it looks good and everything is hunky-dory and everyone gets paid and goes back happy. But then there are a few directors who have some kind of a point to prove, you know, vis-a-vis how they look at life and how they look at stories. Now those are the ones that get really interesting when you're working. And as long as that element is there, whether it's television or whether it's a web series, it's always amazing to work in such projects where the director wants to say something desperately, because that's when he's going to need his actors. Otherwise, you know, it's the regular mundane thing, more or less.
Okay, besides this, there is two more regional films coming up from your side. If you can tell us about that.
Yeah, those are actually not really regional films. They're both global, I'd say.
Okay.
One is a film called Barefoot Warriors, which is an English film, and it's been made by a Hollywood director, Mr. Kavi Raj, who made Black Prince earlier. And the same director has casted me in another film called Kartar Singh Saraba, The Cry for Freedom, which is about a freedom fighter. And again, that film is also in English and Hindi both. So they're both kind of bilinguals. No, the first one is actually completely English, the other one is a bilingual. The first one is about football during pre-independence time, the independence era during that time. And the second one is about a freedom fighter called Kartar Singh Saraba. So both these films are global. They're going to be released worldwide. So can't really call them regional from that yardstick. Then regional films, there is a film called Dhaka, which I'm doing with Gippy Grewal, which I just finished shooting for. Yeah. and there's another film called Sark, which has Mandy Thakkar in it. These are both Punjabi films, and these are as hardcore Punjabi as it can get. So
Okay, so did you started shooting for this too, English films?
yeah, these films are complete.
Complete?
They're going to be released this year, hopefully.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay, so there's so much. 2019 is
look
from
forward
your
to.
side,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So all the
Thankfully.
very best. So finally, like before going, you would like to say something to our fans, like any tips or anything from your side, any message from your side?
Well, there's